Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Joint Education, Health, and Human Services Committee to order. First, I will read the notice, and then we'll have our colleagues introduce themselves. The New Haven Board of Alders Joint Education, Health, and Human Services Committee will meet in person on Thursday, August 22nd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. in the Board of Alders Chambers, 165 Church Street, New Haven, to deliberate and act on LM-2024-0502, resolution acknowledging the City of New Haven's action in 1831 to oppose a college for Black men, apologizing for harm done and calling for reparative measures and racial equity initiatives. This item is on file and available for public inspection in the Office of Legislative Services, 165 Church Street, New Haven. Per order, Honorable Sal Punzo and Honorable Eli Sabin, co-chairs, attest. Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need an accessibility-related accommodation, please contact 203-946-7651 or 203-946-8582. In accordance with the City of New Haven COVID-19 guidelines, masks are now optional. The public may send comments, public testimony at newhavenct.gov. My name is Eli Sabin, and I represent Ward 7 on the Board of Alders, and am the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. So I'll have my co-chair introduce himself.
My name is Sal Punzo, Ward 17, chair of the Education Committee.
Thank you, Honorable Punzo. And then from my left,
Frank Redenti, Ward 15, Fairhaven Ed Committee.
Caroline W. Smith, Ward 9, Health and Human Services.
Tom Ficklin, Ward 28.
thank you. And I know we have our Board of Alders Majority Leader, Richard Furlow, is here, and I think we might have him join us at the table up here for the meeting whenever he returns. And I think our first order of business will be to open this public hearing, and we invite anybody who would like to testify on this item to come forward. I don't know if we have a list of speakers. We're going to start with our colleague, Alder Ficklin.
Tom Ficklin, Ward 28, 390 Bellevue Road.
You know the drill.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you to the co-chairs. Thank you very much. Our former colleague, Mike Moran, has asked me to read his voluminous but detailed testimony. But I think I'll spare you that. I'm sure you've had a chance to commit it to memory, but I do want to read at least the first page and also fulfill my commitment to Mike to at least enter into verbal testimony. It's his cogent comments, and I do appreciate this opportunity. From the desk of our city historian, and as many of you know, Mike was a former alder as well. New Haven Board of Alders Joint Education, Health, and Human Services Committee, the Honorable Sal Punzo, and Eli Sabin, co-chairs. Dear co-chairs, Punzo and Sabin, and members of the Joint Committee, I'm reading this somewhat out of envy. I am traveling out of town in Accra, Ghana at the moment, and so regret that I am unable to be with you in City Hall for your hearing today. I am submitting this testimony by email and for the Honorable Thomas Ficklin to read into the record recording the resolution he has submitted for consideration to the Board of Alders, namely resolution acknowledging the City of New Haven's action in 1831 to oppose a college for Black men, apologizing for the harm done, and calling for reparative measures and racial equity initiatives. As city historian of the City of New Haven, I was glad when Alder Ficklin requested my assistance to provide some insights from history as he contemplated a resolution to reckon with an essential, if not long under-recognized story of New Haven history and national history. His submission, your joint committee's consideration, and public discussion and the eventual disposition of this resolution exemplify the best of what living history can and should be. The active engagement of the past in the present to inform the future. I salute Alder Ficklin for bringing this matter forward and thank you for providing a forum for its consideration. In this centennial year of James Baldwin's birth, your work exemplifies this truth from Baldwin. History is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. If we pretend otherwise, we are literally criminals. This work of history requires that we not only celebrate triumphs of the past, but that we confront the tragedies. As Elizabeth Alexander, someone close to New Haven, reminds us, history is not a triumphal march to the finish line. History is not all upturned faces and ascendant. History is made up of struggle, contradiction, resistance. History is ongoing. History is made, history is active, history is story upon story upon story. History is not punctuated with a period, but rather with the continuing ellipsis. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for our member of the public and colleague? Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alder Ficklin, for your testimony. Just a couple of questions. Thank you so much for reading the city historian's, at least a portion of his remarks. I would love to also, if you can, just speak to why you put forth this resolution and why this was important to lead on.
I appreciate your question, Alder Smith. And I have to go back to our opportunity to give divine comments in the beginning of each board meeting. What I haven't had a chance to say, I've spoken twice, is that whether we consider this to be a secular space or a sacred space, there's that duality. And it's also a historic space. So when I first found out about the 1831 situation, really 20 or so years ago, and then more recently found out that I was pleased to hear that former alder Mike Moran had become our city historian. I've thought about, although there was not the Board of Alders in 1831, our ancestors were there. Our literal ancestors were there. Those folks, the key people in New Haven, we consider ourselves to be key from a political and legislative standpoint, were there. And so it just dawned on me, and this is more of a personality answer to your question, but I appreciate you're giving me a chance to be personal in my response, that we carry the legacy. If you kind of juxtapose the fact that the university has been really on the cutting edge and leading with the book, the Yale Slavery and History book, David Blight's involvement, Mike's involvement, the community's involvement with really understanding this Sankofa phenomenon, meaning the past. How do you kind of gain wisdom from the past, center yourself in the present, but also imagine the future, but proactively imagine the future. So as you have probably seen on some of the testimonies and public comments that people have rendered, they still feel that there's many miles for us to go. But there's always miles for us to go. And I think that's the beauty of whether we're elder statesmen from an age standpoint, like Alder Punzo and myself, or whether we're just new to the game, such as Alder Flores, and then those people that can't even vote, and even the unborn folks. So basically, in essence, when I come into this chamber, it's a historical moment, regardless of what we say or do, but we are part of history, and we're making history. So it just dawned on me that it was not a politically correct thing to do. It was an overtime thing to do, and it was just something for us to kind of let the community know that we're aware of our role, our responsibility, our duties, our passions, our loves on a consistent basis. And that we're willing to kind of ask the hard questions of ourselves. And then more importantly, as you know, the resolution does refer to reparative. The words are used there to deliberately ambiguous about what our next steps might be. But there's always going to be next steps. And just for us to kind of be focused and laser-like in our due diligence. I'm not sure if that answers
It does.
your
Thank you for that answer, Alder Picklin. And just one other question, as we've all been able to read some of the testimony from residents and members of the public. Could you just speak a bit to the engagement around this specific resolution? Just any community members or groups who spoke to just a little bit more of the history of this resolution?
I was quite pleased by the folks that did submit, and I think most of you know in terms of marketing PR, if you get one person submitted public testimony, there might have been 10, 20, 30 that they wanted to, but too lazy. But if you recall Dr. Fred McKinney's comment, first PhD Black economics from Yale, in his comments, if you recall former alderperson Douglas Lady's comments, if you recall Ross Hamilton's comment, Vice President of Amistad, where again, we're at a, for better or for worse, it's more than pizza here in New Haven. It's more than Eli Whitney. It's Amistad. It's 1831. It's in terms of Connecticut, it's Prudence Crandall. If you had a chance to read Couture Abdul Salam's comment, where she referenced that we should be, in her mind, as Mike has often said, that the beacon on the hill in terms of the best public school system in the United States. I firmly still believe that we are in Yaletown, and there's benefit to that. If you can recall in terms of the history of 1831, in terms of why New Haven was selected, and here's the tremendous irony. There was a convention of Black people in Philadelphia and white abolitionists, and on all the cities on the East Coast, they thought that New Haven was the most fertile ground to launch this initiative. That could have been, they met in Philadelphia, but they didn't choose Philadelphia. They did not choose New York. They did not choose, DC was really kind of a swamp back in 1831. But if you think of that, in terms of there nor Boston, which would have been, we had the independence. So you think of that, if you want to use the term white liberals and Black abolitionists saw New Haven to be fertile ground to launch this initiative. Free Blacks, there were a number of Blacks enslaved during that time, just think about the but they saw New Haven to be the place to go. Certainly they did not, their political calculus did not prove when it was like 700 to 4 in terms of the vote, but nonetheless their intention and their interest and their feasibility and their desire and their vision about what New Haven could become, that's striking. So I actually forgot what you asked me, but
No, thank you.
Thank you for your what was the question again?
You answered it. I was curious about what engagement around the resolution looked like.
And then lastly, in terms of my conversation with Mike, when I first saw the book, I'm not sure if we had a chance to visit the exhibit that's now going to be extended at the New Haven Museum. And I talked to Charles Warren Jr. and other community folks. As you know, there's been a study groups leading up to all this momentum. I mentioned to Charles Warren Jr., Chaz is his nickname, and Mike, that really, we're just starting. You hear these words, new beginning, new phoenix rising, etc. But in my mind, we're at a pivotal evolutionary historical standpoint in the world and society. And what is Yale's role moving forward? And we're blessed to be here, to be an alder. I guess the basic, the briefest Reader's Digest answer for your question is, we are blessed to be on this historical stage at this point in time, in my opinion. I'm not being religious or philosophical, but just it's an opportunity, a platinum opportunity for us to be alders and to fulfill when we raised our right hand back in January, to really fulfill that that oath. It's not a blood oath. In my mind, it's a soul oath as well.
Thank you, Alder Bickley. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Any other questions? I also just wanted to invite our colleague, Jordan Furlow, if you want to join us up here. Yes. Thank you. Any other questions from Alder Redende?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have more of a comment than a question because I think Alder Ficklin already answered it. First of all, let me say, shame on the leaders of New Haven in 1831. But there seems to be an all too familiar player involved, Yale. And it seems like we have a lot of social issues now that we deal with. It goes back, we have Yale here. I think Yale could do more for this city in all aspects. And with the endowment that Yale has and the kind of people we have here in New Haven, why not here, why not now? So something like this would have my full support.
If I might, Couture Abdul Salam, her comments particularly emphasize that point. I appreciate your remarks, Alder Red, that yeah, she also felt that we've heard this thing about reparations, retribution, social equity, but this university is considered like one of the 20 top institutions in the world. You think of World Bank, United Nations, whatever your definitions are, but this is one of the most influential institutions, corporations, businesses, research, media maker, you name the word in terms of what influences the world opinion. We are privileged, I'll use that term, to be in the nexus. So how do we exercise our ethics and our morals and our muscle and feel accountable in that as well?
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? I had a question. I was wondering if you could speak to some of the, be it further resolved, or be it resolved clauses of the resolution about sort of what we're calling on the Board of Alders to do and sort of, and where those, what sort of the idea might have been behind some of
the idea was to plant the seed for us to fervently explore what is our future role in terms of the social, economic, spiritual, material life of individuals here in the New Haven area. So the language is deliberately and intentionally wide open for us to engage in a further discussion, given whatever structural methodologies we have here in terms of our legal status. So, and I know you're, when I see you, I see a potential Supreme Court justice, not to affirm that on you, but I understand the legal basis of your question, even if that was not your intent. And so, but this is deliberately and not a call to action, but an opportunity for us to further delve into what our responsibilities and roles and influence, legislative, et cetera, might be. So it would have been premature to my mind, to try to influence people about what next actions should be taken, but just to kind of see if we can create an imaginative, but proactively imaginative purpose, and not just a one-off purpose, but a sustained purpose. So some ideas that might come up might be ideas proposing for something that might need to happen for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years or in perpetuity, to use a legal term. And so we want to give people that creative opportunity, give us that creative opportunity, really manifest our dreams for New Haven, even after we have left the earth.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is that?
Yeah, that was helpful. Do we have any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I think you can return to this side of the table if you like, and wondering if maybe we have additional public testimony. Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here. If you could give your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Charles Warner Jr. I'm a resident of Hamden, Connecticut, 284 Grandview Avenue. Although I am a current resident of Hamden, I am a lifelong New Havener. I grew up and graduated from New Haven Public Schools. I'm still primarily active. I'm an employee of the New Haven Public Schools right now. On the board of the International Festival of Arts and Ideas, the Amistad Committee, the Q House, and I am the state chair of the Connecticut Freedom Trail. We have over 170 sites related to the contributions of African Americans, slavery, the abolition movement, and concepts about freedom all over the state, small towns, and large cities. I'm also a member of the Yale and Slavery Working Group that did a lot of the research leading up to the book that Alder Ficklin mentioned, which is Yale and Slavery: A History, that has a chapter written by our city historian, Mike Moran, on the 1831 college. So really it's just a point of information for you all to understand. The story of 1831, obviously 200 years old almost. However, the impact of it, when you really look at the 1831 story, the question should be, what was the opportunity cost and lost? And what is the impact on New Haven today? And so you can take any city in the country that has a really strong institution of higher learning, particularly those that have historically Black colleges and universities in Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, and look at the impact that those institutions have had on the African American population in those locales. Washington, D.C., a hub for, anchored by Howard University, a hub for training legal scholars that changed the face of this nation in terms of civil rights. Providing opportunities for Black doctors to train at hospitals where there were no other opportunities. And so New Haven had the opportunity in 1831 to create a situation much like that here in our own backyard. And so while we certainly lament the loss, we also look at the present conditions of New Haven's African American population. I myself grew up at a time when crack and hard drugs were having a very deleterious effect on the New Haven community. I was growing up in New Haven when AIDS was a major plague, and I was protected from that because my parents had the opportunity to be in long lines of college education that provided them opportunities to have wonderful jobs that, you know, could supply us and protect us in a way that a lot of my friends were not. And some of those conditions are still very prevalent in New Haven today. If you look at the disparities in health, Black people are at the top of all sort of horrible health conditions, horrible housing conditions, horrible educational conditions. And so it is my contention that had the 1831 college been allowed to be built in this city, we definitely would have a different landscape today, economically, educationally, politically, and so on and so forth. And so we have a really wonderful opportunity to really live up to what I know New Haven to be, which is a community where everyone cared about everyone's history. I grew up where diverse cultures and diverse groups lifted up the really beautiful parts of New Haven, and they did it together. And we still do that here very well. So while I cannot sort of determine what the outcomes should be, it's not for me to do. It was my job to be sort of like a private investigator and help bring information to the public and let the public make the case for what they want to happen. But I can tell you that the destruction of the 1831 college idea has left a really dark cloud over this city, over the Black population in this city that is still there today.
Thank you for your testimony and for all your work on this issue. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Punzo and Alder Ficklin, these are two gentlemen who I've known growing up in this community. I'm really proud of you guys.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? Do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? And a third time, do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? Seeing none, motion to close the public portion of the hearing is appropriate.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of closing the public portion of the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The public portion of the hearing is closed. And I would like to move the item for the purposes of discussion, and
You can't do that after you're going to vote.
okay. For the point of information, can a motion be retracted? Is that?
I don't, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think that that's wise, but you as the chair do have the ability to just talk about the item without moving it, if that's what you would desire to do, rather than putting forth a motion and retracting it. I know that that's kind of been the habit, but it's not appropriate.
Understood, thank you. Well, I'll just say that I am glad that this resolution has been brought to the board. I think that what happened in 1831 is, I think, as Mr. Warner and Alder Ficklin explained, has had, I think, a cascading impact over generations, which is something that we should reckon with and consider and think about, what we can do going forward in this moment to recognize that and to address those harms. And I think that I would be in support of making a motion to move this item forward, and I'd like to ask maybe if my co-chair has anything that he'd like to say at this time.
No, I really don't. I'm just, it was great information, very informative. And I read through the, what some of the people wrote. I think her name is Katula Bryant, and she was talking about how we can relate what education is today or what happened back then and how we can improve education today. And I think that's one avenue that we certainly strive for every year. And I think that's something that we can do. Unfortunately, I agree with Mr. Warner that if that college was established, New Haven would be a different place, totally different place. So I think now we can look at what we have today in education and how we can better what we have moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-chair. So I would like to move this item and see if we have a second.
Second.
Discussion. Do we have any comments from members of the committee? Alder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I don't think that it's wise to move the item or to move this item favorably to the Board of Alders at this point. So let me just say why, since it's been moved. You're working with a park committee. You're discussing an item that should have citywide support. And we had one person who we're greatly appreciative of that came out to testify. It was my expectation and hope that this would have been held in committee and we could have gotten some more press and public input around an item that is extremely important to Black people and to the Black culture in New Haven. And just to be honest about it, I would be very offended if we were to send this out of committee with such little support and dialogue over something that's been more than 200 years in the making. I appreciate Alder Ficklen and all that he's done, but to hold this meeting in August, knowing that there would not be good support, is just a bad reflection upon us and our real concern about how important this topic is. And so my vote would be no on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Do we have any other comments from members of the committee? I think that I would like to, I know that this is what our Majority Leader just told me not to do, but I think I would like to withdraw my motion at this time. And I will just explain that while I wholeheartedly support the concept that we're working on here, I think that I agree with my colleague and our Majority Leader that it makes sense to try to make sure that we have an even more robust conversation about this incredibly important and historic resolution, that we're thinking about the consequences of an action from almost 200 years ago and its rippling effects throughout generations within our city. And I think in particular, one of the main authors of this resolution wasn't unfortunately able to be here today, and it would be excellent to have an opportunity for him to be here and talk a little bit more about the resolution and to just get some more folks from the community out to discuss this resolution. So I will withdraw my resolution, my motion, and I hope that we can continue this very important conversation. And unless my co-chair has any additional comments,
I do not.
I think at this time I will move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Discussion on the motion to adjourn. Seeing none. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.